Hey, it's Autumn. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and liking if you're into ecological work and environmental advocacy and themes. I'm a student studying botany at the University of Maine, and I created this channel to document and record my research as I interview people, as I do my own video essay research, and as I vlog the ongoings that I have as a botany student in all of my various adventures. Now, without further ado, I hope you enjoy the interview that I had with Andrew Tuttle and Mary Marshall, who are the co-creators of Edge Perma, the Permaculture Collective, and who co-host the Permaculture podcast alongside Scott Mann. So please enjoy the video. Awesome. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this little interview. If you can't tell, I'm new at this. um, But let's start off with some introductions. Like, who are you? Tell me more about your work, about Edge Perma and the Permaculture Collective, and your work on the podcast.
Yeah, we're super excited to be meeting with you today, Autumn. My name is Mary Marshall, and I am the co-owner of Edge Perma and Redtail Edge Design. And we do ecological landscape design, but are also the co-hosts of the Permaculture podcast.
Yeah, we just started hosting. I guess I should start with my name. My name is Andrew Tuttle, and I'm Mary's business partner and best friend. I guess I'll jump to the beginning. We were once upon a time married, uh, quite a while ago. When I was 20 years old, Mary was 24.
Mhm.
We were together for a very long time. And things changed in our lives, and we've since split up as partners, but we've stayed together as best friends and as business partners. We both are also land stewards of Cragtree Farm near Arlington, Washington, which is a historic farm education center and intentional community. We're working on restoring this site with a group of friends and creating a new intentional community and doing some education here as well. But our passion for permaculture, regenerative farming, all of this stuff and teaching started in like 2015 when we both moved back to Washington State, and I started studying permaculture design and just got obsessed with it. Started working on all these different farms, and then Mary has a background in art, so we wanted to figure out how to merge my obsession with farming and Mary's skills with art.
And we've always been, nature nerds and loved being outside and hiking, and then taking that into more of a professional, lens and becoming plant nerds and then studying that in college. It just, yeah, the learning never stops. And I think that that's the beautiful thing about this field, is that we are forever students and just are always hungry to learn about how we can better ourselves and better the planet and be positive contributions.
Yeah, and we started Redtail Edge Design right after completing the design program at Edmonds College, and started offering professional design services in landscape and farm design back in 2018, and then started Edge Perma, started researching for the project, the Edge Perma project, in 2021, the very beginning of 2021, and that's been our primary focus for the last few years, is using new technology to create accessible education in permaculture, specifically creating the what I'd say is the world's most advanced virtual tours of farms.
Yeah, those are really great. I've explored a few on your website, and it's just such a phenomenal resource. Why don't you go a little in depth about your educational journeys and how you started your more academic approach to permaculture design?
Yeah, do you want to talk about alderleaf? It kind of started there. We'd been researching permaculture before that, which is, and just eating healthy and foraging weeds from our lawn and sneaking those into salads. But I think from that point is when we moved back to Washington and you started going to alderleaf.
Yeah, Mary and I had a garden back in Virginia when we lived on the East Coast, and yeah, we're really into foraging, really into nature, and then found permaculture, and it was like, whoa, this is this space where there's all these people coming together under one topic that unites us, where we're focused on regenerating the earth, and it was like I felt like I found my people. found my community and just dove into that space, studying permaculture design at Alderleaf Wilderness College, which was a 9 months naturalist immersion program, studying ecology, wildlife tracking, plant ID, all of this sort of stuff, with a permaculture design course wrapped into that course. And then shortly after that, Mary, if you want to share.
Yeah, because Andrew was in the kind of training to become a permaculture design instructor and he's now able to lead classes and give certifications to students. And there's a whole process to be able to be qualified to do that. And so during that kind of internship, student teaching, I piggybacked onto that and was like, heck yeah, I want to do my PDC. And it was just really cool to do it in a different way, because often they're maybe like a 2-week or just for a couple weeks, like in the summer and that sort of thing. But mine was throughout a whole semester. And that was really cool because I was able to be really immersed into Alderleaf's their school and get to know the other students, and felt immersed into kind of the life of permaculture for months rather than just a couple weeks. So it was a different way of doing it, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, and then from there we started job shadowing under Terra Phoenix Design, which is Dave Bainline, Paul Kearsley, and Doug Bullock, who are just incredible mentors and friends of ours. And we really got to see what professional permaculture design from experts looks like and feels like in that process. So we took our baseline information in permaculture studies, and then just like we were jumping onto as many projects as we could with them. And then teaching with Dave. So I just like latched onto Dave and followed him everywhere. And we taught a bunch of different permaculture design courses. I was his assistant on those. Which I will say, if there's anybody out there interested in getting into education, you just got to start. I was not qualified to be speaking in front of anybody at the time, but I got into teaching so that I could solidify the knowledge that I was seeking within myself. I didn't get into teaching to teach, I got into teaching to learn. And that was a huge passion of mine moving forward. And so I knew that in order to become a great teacher, I was going to need to learn a lot of different farm systems. So I straight up bounced from farm to farm year after year, going and trying to figure out like how can I just be a sponge everywhere I go and soak up as much information as possible from these farmers. And so it was a mixture of working on farms and getting hands-on experience in the field, and then going to Goddard College, where Goddard College is a very interesting place with a unique style. I built my entire curriculum myself, which was all permaculture education. So I went and became a certified instructor. And then, yeah, just we went to Edmonds.
Yeah. And I think a big part of going to college for, whether it's horticulture, going to Edmonds, we did the landscape design track there and got our degree with that, but also combining that, because that's more kind of conventional residential landscape design, but pairing that with just the ecological side of it as well. A lot of our education has been really self-guided. And it's about, when we're going on vacation, we're seeking out the farmers in our areas and in different areas when we're traveling, and just want to learn other people's methods and getting tapped into the community within our local region and getting to know people, that are doing incredible things around us. That has been instrumental in putting us in the spot that we are today and helping us to gain those connections, like with Scott Mann and doing the permaculture podcast. We wouldn't have been offered that opportunity, or we wouldn't have been able to be on the podcast if we didn't just want to reach out to him and get to know him as a colleague and as a friend. And just that commonality of being magnetized towards people that have that are driven by those ethics and
Right.
have that same drive.
Yeah, we seek out people that have experience and expertise, and we try
Just want to
to,
learn from
yeah.
them.
So a huge part of our learning experience is just building community, building relationships with brilliant minds, and having the privilege of getting to learn from so many incredible mentors of ours over the years.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. I'm like totally envious, but I'm also like, I'm just starting out, you know? So I get to experience all of that. And now I know what to look for. Um,
Well, and it
that's
can
good.
look different for everyone, you know, there's no cut and paste.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's start off with a deeper question first, and then we'll do a fun, simple one. All right, so what would be your your very first step when you're going out to design a landscape to be permaculture, when you're going to design a permaculture landscape?
Well, we're about to go to a client's place after this. And so for me, I, put in the address into the search bar online and just get to know what the aerial looks like. What are the property lines? And just get a feel for what it is that I'll be walking into, whether it's a half acre, whether it's 100 acres, because it's just a whole different perspective. And so being able to see that from the sky, and I'll print out, the screenshots of that. I'll usually, make it a little bit more opaque so I can sketch over it when I'm on site, but it's the work beforehand. And I also am grateful for this guy because he does a lot of the communications with the clients. And so that is important as well because you get all the deets, all the intel from what they're looking for.
Yeah, and that pretty much describes my first steps is listening. That's what it comes down to. Like permaculture is only permaculture when it's guided by the stakeholders, when it's guided by the land stewards on site. And I think that's one of the biggest issues in permaculture is we oftentimes have these ideas, these big visions and dreams that we saw in a book, and we're like, oh, I want to put that in this design. Well, it's not about you, it's about them, it's about the people on site. And so you put your ego aside and you show up just to listen, and you listen closely and diligently, and you absorb as much of that information about who that person is and what that land, what they know about that land, and then you help them build a vision around what their needs are.
Awesome. All right, now on to the fun, simple questions. Well, simple. So, what is your favorite thing to grow or that you've ever grown?
Oh my goodness. I would say one of my favorite things is tomatillos. And I know, I'm obsessed with my dog. That's my dog's name, but I'm also obsessed with that plant just because it's really fun to harvest from because it's basically a tomato plant, but they have their own little husks and they just drop to the ground. And so you that tells you when they're ready and you just kind of scoop them up and they're fun to eat and they're a really fun little snack food.
It's fun
Yeah,
to say too.
Uh-huh.
yeah. Yeah, for me it'd be Pacific wax myrtle or Morella californica or Morella. I feel like maybe that changed recently. The Latin names are always changing on plants. But Pacific wax myrtle is native from Vancouver area in British Columbia all the way down to Baja, Mexico, and it supports the widest diversity of migratory bird species of any plant on the West Coast. And so that's one that goes in every single one of our designs. Spoiler alert.
That's true.
Working with us in the future.
All right, before I go on to the interview questions, I almost forgot my research questions, which are all about rewilding. I just did my first video in my rewilding series that's all about rewilding contexts and origins and definitions, but I'm working on a second part to it that's just rewilding perspectives since it's such a there's a very wide a range of like definitions and interpretations. So I've been interviewing my family members, my friends, my professors, and I'd love to ask you the same questions to kind of get that um, variety of different perspective on what rewilding might mean to you, or if you aren't as familiar with it, which but the first question is, when I say the word rewilding, what does that mean to you? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good question. And the first thing that came to mind for me was thinking about how humans impact landscapes. And it's pretty clear in this part of the world, at least, everywhere I drive and spend time traveling around this region, the Pacific Northwest, I see that humans have shaped landscapes with farming. I grew up in a farming town, and that was all I was surrounded with was a sea of corn and blueberries and raspberries and monoculture agriculture, and none of it looked like a native ecosystem, or there's very small patches of native ecosystems left. And so for me, rewilding is really rooted in agriculture, and looking at how we can use regenerative farming practices to create farm systems that look and feel and act more like a native ecosystem. And so I dream of a future where when I travel these same paths, the I-5 corridor, I look out and I see tree systems, and I look and I see diversification and happy wildlife and healthy waters and healthy air and healthy people. So rewilding for me is very much rooted in agriculture, because we are an agrarian people. And that goes back so far, and it's just very clear to me that everywhere we go, we see these agricultural systems that are not wild spaces, and that are not healthy spaces. So to me, rewilding is restoring spaces and restoring ecosystems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. When I first heard the term, I, in a sense, maybe only heard the wilding part. And I think with rewilding, it is about, there still is human intervention involved, because at least for me, because we need to intervene, because there has been human intervention for decades now. And there's been introduced species and there's invasives. So if we were to just let things go wild, in my mind, that would not be the most productive or healthy ecosystem. I think that since there has been introduced species like, with the Himalayan blackberry or invasive hollies, in our forests here, in order for it to be rewilded, there needs to be love put into those spaces. And so I think that it's about reading that landscape too. Like when we go to a client's property, I don't want to, do a clean sweep of everything and start fresh so that we can put just a bunch of natives in there. Like sometimes you have to work with what was there before. And yeah, it's about creating that balance.
Yeah, and recognizing that these ecosystems evolved alongside people. We were always supposed to be working in tandem with nature, working with nature. And for thousands and thousands of years, people have stewarded this land, and without human intervention, we wouldn't have the lush space that we live in here in the Pacific Northwest. We're blessed to have so much here. And the reason we have so much here is because of the indigenous people that came before us. So I just wanted to also mention that that's a huge part of rewilding for me, is looking to indigenous practices and seeing which ways those can apply to our design work and to helping people implement these regenerative agriculture systems, because there's so much to learn from those that have been here for forever and are still stewarding land all around us.
Yeah, and so that's a huge part of it, is respecting those natural spaces that exist, and yeah, doing the best we can to mimic nature within our designs.
Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you. The next question I have was, what does a regenerative world look like to you?
Oh, gosh.
I I think that the best step that we can take towards a regenerative world is knowing our impact and doing the best we can to heal spaces. And so when it comes to if you're trying to have a productive veggie garden, um, it's easy for people to lean into that instant gratification, but sometimes it's okay to slow down. Nature is slow. And so I think when it comes to regenerating spaces, like we've been on this farm for a couple of years, and the first year and a half has really been about observing and being being aware of our impact on the land. And so it's been sure a lot of hacking back blackberry, but before we make big changes on the land, um, doing that planning, that plotting of what is going to be best for this space, for this land. What is the history of this land? That's something that we've really been leaning into, is learning from the previous stewards, what was this land before we all got here, and what can we do to um yeah bring others onto this space and make it a community project, and how can we all be involved into tending to the land and healing it.
I'd say that to answer your question from my perspective, like I don't have the best imagination. I never have, but so I'm going to use a reference from what I've seen, and that's like I've had the privilege to travel to several like incredible permaculture sites, and the one that first comes to mind is the Bullock's Permaculture Homestead out on Orcas Island. And so when I think of what a regenerative future looks like, I'm like, oh, I've seen what it could look like. I've seen at least one space that just totally just knocked my socks off. It's like you walk around the space and it feels different. It feels like there's magic in the air because people have been applying permaculture principles there for over 40 years. And when you see that in action, when you see thoughtful, intentional design, and you see people working in symphony with nature, it is a special thing. A friend recently said that he's not focused on reducing his footprint, he's focused on increasing his handprint. Well, I've seen people use those handprints to just do what is almost unexplainable. Through intentional design and through applying permaculture and seeing it in action. So yeah, it's just a regenerative future is an oasis. It's a thriving ecosystem where there isn't this fight against nature, but we're working with nature, and we're thriving together with the animals and with the waterways and with the earth. Yeah, we're just, I don't know, that a regenerative future is going to be a beautiful thing. And luckily, in the spaces we work, we see so much. We're so close to so much restoration, so much regenerative systems, that I feel wildly optimistic for the future of life on Earth.
Wow, awesome. The next one is, how do you feel about the natural environment around you, or how does it make you feel?
For me, it's part of I don't know. I With my health and well-being, it's like every single day I have to be in it. I have to be held by my environment. And I get out and I walk in nature every day. I live on this beautiful dead-end road surrounded with forest, and the farm that I live on is 20 acres. So I yeah, I dream of a future where everyone can have these experiences, because certainly like not all of the world is surrounded with beautiful natural spaces, and I understand how important that is to my personal health. But yeah, that's it for me. Is it's just like I feel like a part of it. I feel like it fills my soul, and I can't imagine life without all of this beauty around me.
Yeah, I am incredibly grateful for where we live, and it is healing. I mean, for me, the huge push for getting into this field and living on land and living in nature was needing to heal from trauma. And so I think that that is something that if you lean into what nature has to offer, then it can change your life. And it's changed mine.
Amazing. That's all of the questions I have. I had one more, but you answered it already. So go to a fun one because that was a lot of deepness. What is your favorite aspect of permaculture?
I would say my favorite aspect is the positivity that it brings. And that is maybe, down to just I look outside and I see, happy animals, and I get to interact with nature all the time, seeing all the hawks and birds. And there was a bear in a cherry tree recently, and that is an incredible thing. But I think um, for my day to day, it's the people and the people that are drawn together because we just care. And so that's the thing that I didn't really expect to come out of learning about plants and about nature is the people care. And that's something that I didn't know that I necessarily needed, but I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah, for me, the so many favorites. I like when I walk around all over the place. When I walk around this farm, I constantly thinking about zones of use. So we're starting an intentional community here. There's Mary's tiny house, Zach and Emily's tiny house, and then we're in my home here in the work office. But as I walk across the farm to go see my friends every day, I think about these zones that I'm traveling, these zone one pathways, and how I don't know, I just like these designs just start like appearing in my head as I walk through this space, and I'm dreaming of the future where those spaces are just lush and filled with more foods that I can just eat on my walk every day to go see my buds. But
I guess I have to keep making you coffee every morning because that was your walk this morning, was to come get your
yeah.
morning dose.
But I guess beyond that, it's yeah, seeing such radical change happening just down the road from us, 10 minutes away, is a incredible project that's happening. That it was one of the co-founders is Dave Bainline, our permaculture teacher. He's working with a collective called the Rooted Northwest, and they are practicing regenerative agriculture on, I think it's 240 acres. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's in Arlington, Washington.
And they are restoring this land using regenerative agricultural practices and developing an agri-village, so developing 35 homes on this site. And it's kind of a groundbreaking project in a lot of ways. They actually changed laws to make this happen. And this is one of a handful of projects that we're aware of and have learned from and have seen in action. And it's just incredible to witness so much good. That's why I got into permaculture, was it's like we see so much bad all the time, right? It's pretty rough. It's pretty rough out there. So I can't live like that. And I'm not going to. I'm going to continue to go and see all of the good and go and be a part of that however I can, and go and experience projects like Beacon Food Forest in Seattle, this like radical idea of public food grown on public land that's open harvest for people in need. And then documenting that and sharing it with the world in using our virtual tours. Like that's why we got into this, is it's like we've seen how powerful this stuff can be, and we want to show people we want to give people the ability to go travel to these sites just by clicking a button. And so that's where a lot of our passion comes from. It's rooted in accessibility and giving people these experiences where they can see these profound sites that we've had the privilege of seeing.
Yeah, it's been 3 years of trying to figure out, because it's all been self-funded. And so it's been a grind to figure out how to still make this an accessible piece, education program, or however it might be utilized. And so we are still in that process and finally gaining traction on getting those tours into people's hands, and helping people to find a new way to find that beauty in the world. Because like you're saying, there is a lot of ugly, but it's up to each of us to try and immerse ourselves in the beauty that is out there. And I might be living in my own little bubble, but I will do all that I can to find that beauty.
Yeah, and to add to what Mary was just saying too, we are forming a lot of partnerships right now with organizations and universities that see how powerful the technology is that we're developing. And we're excited for the future of education. It is a really exciting space to be working because it's all about accessibility. It's all about reaching students of all different learning styles and giving everyone equal access to tour farms, because it's the most inaccessible learning experience there is, hands down. Farmers just don't have time to give people a tour. We don't have time to take off of work and money to travel and to buy plane tickets. So that's what we're doing, is we're creating something that can show people permaculture in action.
How do you deal with invasive plant species in your space?
Yeah. So when we got here at Prague Tree Farm a couple of years ago, it was a sea of blackberry, and it was very, very daunting and hard to know where to start, because how tall was the it was over my head.
10 to 15 feet tall, almost everywhere, mixture of invasive grasses and invasive blackberry.
Yeah, so it depends on what each person is having to deal with and at what capacity what tools they have. But in order to deal with that, we did an initial sweep with the tractor, with the brush cutter, but so that we didn't drive over any fencing or posts or anything. I went in front of the tractor with a machete and made sure that everything was good so that we could get through that space. So I think that it's good to do an initial cutting, and then we went from there on figuring out the next steps and doing hand digging of weeds. But yeah, a lot of repetitive of hacking back, but also taking the time to read the landscape and make sure that we're not removing more than we need to.
Yeah, and we're intentionally working in a way that's like we're hoping to use less and less fuel over time. That's always going to be our goal. And we're seeing that happen right now. Having managed this land for a couple of years, we're already seeing that happen.
Oh, yeah.
We're working on spreading a lupin patch that is self-maintaining. There isn't much we have to do there. The lupin pretty much, I mean, there's a little bit of blackberry in that space, but if we just mow it once a year, or even like once every other year, there really isn't a lot we have to do in that space. We found a plant that works perfectly in that niche, and then we're helping it spread to take over and manage more of that space. But then we also worked with students. We had a huge restoration ecology class come out here where we're actively working in the field, learning together while tending the land as a group, because 20 acres is a huge amount of space for people to manage. But when we had this huge collection of students come out, we had a great time. We learned together and we got a lot done. Now we're actively managing that space that we first started restoring with students.
Yeah, there's blueberry plants that were completely engulfed by blackberry. And so with the help of others, we were able to unveil them, and they produced so many berries this year. And I expect that they'll just keep continuing to,
They're doing great. They're 70-year-old blueberry plants.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, one other thing I wanted to mention about invasive plant management is that oftentimes, we see these plants as so evil, but our many of our ancestors brought them here from all around the world, right? And there can be so many benefits from medicine to food to fiber and fuel and like Himalayan blackberry is very, very challenging to manage. It's intense and it's also delicious and it's an abundant food source that's all around us. And so I just wanted to like also share that perspective that I have a huge amount of gratitude for these plants and I also find them very challenging to work with sometimes. But there's plants like Scotch broom that's a nitrogen fixer, and I've seen people use that to benefit their land, where Scotch broom shows up and it's growing as this invasive plant, fixing nitrogen because it's in the pea family. And so maybe these folks will plant a fruit tree next to it. And then when the Scotch broom goes to flower, they cut the flowers back and keep it from going to seed, keep it from spreading, and utilize that as a nitrogen fixer in a plant that's benefiting the land. And so I just wanted to also share that perspective that there's ways in which we can utilize invasive plants for a very positive way, like grafting pear trees to an invasive hawthorn plant, using that like incredible rootstock to grow fruit and be highly productive while also like it has a natural like deer cage essentially because of the spikes from that plant, or thorns from that plant. And so I wanted to also just mention that briefly.
Yeah, yeah. As I look outside, I see a wall of Himalayan blackberry, but it's giving me privacy from my neighbors and keeping my dog from going into their yard, So there are the benefits of that. And sure, someday maybe we'll phase it out and replace it with something else. But I don't have any shame in that's still existing there. It's all about managing it and making sure that the usable space is being tended to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Now, what is something you love about being educators?
I think I'm still in denial that I am an educator. I think I just love talking to people about what I'm passionate about. And that is the main thing for me is that I love being a part of this community and being able to wake up every day and do something, have a career encompassing something that I care about. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I also like I have this goal of one day becoming a great educator. Um and I hope to like one day be like, yeah, I feel like I'm there. But no, I have so much to learn, so much to learn and I love it, love learning. And love sharing and sometimes there's really special moments when we're teaching a class and those special moments are it's just all about community because education is not a solo mission. It's just not. We learn together. We were always supposed to learn together from our elders as a group. And so in classes that we've done more recently, it's about like how can we bring people together? How can we integrate how can we make this a community building experience while growing together? And so yeah, that's my favorite thing about when I get the opportunity to be in a position where I get to teach. It's about connecting people.
Wow, I love that. This is something that always trips me up. What is the difference between regenerative agriculture and permaculture?
Um, Permaculture is a design system. That's basically the biggest difference. Is it's like regenerative agriculture is there's a set of principles that go along with regenerative agriculture, like carbon sequestration, reduced tillage, biological diversity, water conservation, animal or livestock integration, diversified crop systems. Those are some of the key principles of regenerative farming. And then permaculture is a design process that starts with ethics principles and then walking through essentially the steps of permaculture design. So that's kind of how I would define the differences there.
Yeah, yeah. Because with permaculture, there's books written on it, and it was a system created by humans. Whereas regenerative agriculture, that's kind of, in my mind, more guided by nature and what it's needing, and what filling those gaps of, from human intervention on what would be the best way to regenerate that land.
Yeah, I'll also mention too that these are just opinions because like with regenerative agriculture and permaculture, no one agrees on the definition. It's just not a thing. And so what we just shared is our opinions.
Right. Yeah. And then you loop in indigenous methods, and where does that work into all of this? And so that's something that I'm consistently wanting to read into and make sure that I'm always learning on what are the best ways to, what are the different methods.
Right. And there's people that have been practicing permanent culture, like building permanent cultures all around the world for forever. And permaculture, the design system is newer, right? But a lot of what we find in the permaculture text was inspired by indigenous and traditional cultures around the planet. And so oftentimes like there's this argument like, oh, why are we crediting these old white guys with this idea of permaculture? Like they didn't come up with creating a permanent culture. And no, they didn't. But David Holmgren and Bill Mollison did put together a design system that I credit them for. And that
is incredibly useful. Yep. There's a lot to learn from all these different systems and ways of adopting practices. And so, yeah, I think that we are always leaning into, what are the various methods that we can adopt. And yeah, it's important for us to continue doing our research as well as others, especially when it's so dependent on each region and what it is what are you trying to tackle? It's going to look different for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely, through my research, I found such a wide variety of vocabulary used to kind of describe the same thing, which can, I'm sure you understand, trip you up a lot when you're trying to define exactly what you're doing or trying to do. What is an unpopular permaculture opinion that you have?
Well, probably the one I just shared about invasive plants. That's really controversial. So cancel me or whatever. But yeah, I mean, permaculturists get a really bad rep for spreading invasive plants, and that's not what I was advocating for earlier. What I was saying is, if it already is there, how can we utilize it to benefit the plants around it, to benefit our bodies and our needs? Because there's incredible plants all around us, and some of them would be considered invasive, but some of those invasive plants are also medicine and have all of these different like incredible uses, and the pollinators love them and the wildlife utilize them. So I guess that's the unpopular opinion, is just looking at plants differently through a different lens. And certainly we didn't, like, if I had spoken like this in our ecology classes years ago, I probably would have kept most of these opinions to myself, because those are unpopular opinions in the restoration ecology world.
Yeah. And I would say for me, when I read books and there's almost a prescription of plants that are recommended, I find that a little bit confusing. I mean, I understand why, and that there are so many plants out there that have benefits, whether they're nitrogen fixers or, are helping amend the soil and different needs. But when it comes to recommending plants, I don't have the same recipe for every client. And it really depends on each area. And that's why one of our favorite classes that we teach is our favorite plants for the Pacific Northwest. And we go through when and why you would use them, and to really help people figure out what are the permaculture plants that work for you or for your landscape or for what your goals are. And so when I see people say like, oh, you need comfrey, you need this plant, I don't know if they do.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. What does food sovereignty mean to you?
Food sovereignty is like equal access for all people to have the foods that we need to nourish our bodies.
Accessibility is the big word that comes to mind for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And creating a food system that restores ecosystems and protects our health, protects our waters, protects all life. It starts with the development of these regenerative food systems, and it ends with the final product and the connection, the building of relationships between people and food. Unfortunately, over the past several decades, we've become so disconnected from our food. We don't have relationships like we're supposed to with the soil and with these life forces that give us all of the life that we have. And so, yeah, I guess food sovereignty for me is just, accessibility and more equal access to these experiences, these relationships with real food, nutrient dense food that comes from regenerative systems.
Yeah. I think one of the more beautiful things that I've seen lately is we've been working at the Snohomish Farmers Market for a friend selling, she makes mushroom tinctures, and she lives kind of far and we live closer, so we're partnering with her to sell her product. But as I'm standing there and watching all the people interact, I see farmers running to other stands with their veggies in hand and bartering and trading, and just really spreading the love and getting to meet these farmers and see the smiles on their faces when people are buying from them, and the gratitude that people have just knowing that what food they're buying is or trading is coming from a space that was organic, or the methods that they're using with soil care in mind. At least those are my favorite farmers. And I think that it's just a really, really incredible thing to see when they are at the farmers market and trading with one another, trading their goods. And I recently bought a thing of spinach from him, and it was the end of the day and I left with my arms full, and I only bought one thing, but he's like, no, please take the sprouts. So I think it's just really, really sweet, the generosity that is within that community. And I'm just so grateful to know that so much love goes into growing those foods. And
but we need those markets everywhere. That's what food sovereignty looks like,
right?
Is those markets, equal access to those spaces, equal access to that food. And at that same market a few weeks ago, I was working, and a grandmother was walking by our booth with her granddaughter, and she asked, like, why aren't we just at the grocery store? And her grandmother said, we're here to that's making me cry. We're here to support the people that are doing their best to take care of the world and take care of people. And it was just one of the most beautiful things I'd ever heard. And yeah, that was like a really beautiful moment looking into food sovereignty.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right, what is your favorite type of garden?
Hard questions.
I think my favorite type of garden, I love it when there's a hint of neglect. I think that it is just incredible to see what plants thrive in our area. And instead of fighting the system, trying to make something grow that doesn't belong there, but instead leaning into the plants that are meant for our space and just take off with minimal inputs. If you can get away with not watering as much or that sort of thing, find the plants that work in your area and or in that spot and see if they'll survive. And if they do, then that's the plant you want. Those are the gardens I like to see when people are doing those trials and really leaning into the trial and error and being okay with that error.
Mm-hmm. My answer to this question would be like, well, it's such a hard question, because yeah, I'm really struggling to find an answer because I guess my favorite gardens are when I go to a site and I see different styles that match that specific niche of that site. Like at the Bullocks Homestead, there's a south-facing slope that's just this dry, rocky, hot um, little microclimate where there's fig trees and there's Chilean guava and there's all of these different layers. Loquat, yeah, there's all of these plants that are just like making best use of that specific microclimate, and they're growing exactly where they want to grow and they're thriving in that space. So I guess to summarize, my favorite garden is like right plant in the right place when you see a thriving little microclimate, and the plants that are just happiest in that space. And you're like, wow, you can see that somebody communicated with those plants and they understood their needs and they spent time observing that space and they put together the right collection in the right space. That's my favorite kind of garden, is when you can really recognize that there was an intelligent, thoughtful designer that spoke with that land and worked with the plants in that land in a beautiful way.
Yeah, and if the plants are happy, then the people are happy, they get the fruit, and then the animals are happy. And so it just creates that whole ecosystem when there is that biodiversity where, yeah, people ask like, what do I do? All the deer, the birds are eating all my fruits. I'm like, just plant more and create that biodiversity, but it's got to be the right plant in the right place. So that's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Just plant more. Let's see. How do you incorporate research into your practice?
So the Edge Perma project started as a research project. In 2021, I was at Goddard College finishing up my studies there, and my senior study was basically how can we use technology to advance our field. And so we started researching drones and cameras and software and putting this all together, how we can create this comprehensive research project to do site analysis on these regenerative farm systems. And the whole goal was to give people the tools necessary to replicate successful regenerative farms, because they can be very complex. And certainly there's no like copy paste button, like this land is going to be different than this land versus, and there it's all different soil types, different slope and topography, different conditions, different climates. But what we want to do is to create this massive list of case studies of sites where you can pull from this style and this style, and maybe this works on your site, maybe that works on your site. But we want to show people what's been done and what works, so that we don't have to fail over and over again doing the same research that other people have already done. So as far as like using research in our work, the entire Edge project is a very in-depth research project of case studies of permaculture sites, and we're continuing to work on more of those projects right now. Those will be available on our website in the near future. But then as far as like research on landscapes, you might speak to that, Mary.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that within landscapes and landscape design, being able to help people create that oasis that they step outside and they're able to eat from their garden and share with their neighbors. I think that I think that it's a beautiful thing when somebody wants to, even if their landscape doesn't match what their neighbors are doing, to hopefully help influence those neighbors to go outside of the box and to plant more edible plants, whether it's for the wildlife and they're not benefiting from it, or it's not the most palatable fruits, that it's okay to go outside the box of what your neighbors are doing, because that will hopefully help influence them.
Yeah, and then I mean, just designing every single site, it's like we spend a lot of time just looking stuff up and compiling really detailed plant lists. And so now we have a lot of different plant lists that we pull from all of our past projects where I'm like, oh, I really need some livestock fodder tree species that are great for coppicing and pollarding. And so I'm working on a project right now, and I'm like, oh, I'll go look at our past project where we had a list of those trees. But it started with compiling that list. So there was a lot of research that went into finding those exact tree species and then
cataloging
them and then sourcing them, like, because a plant list is worthless unless you can actually find the plants. So we often try to find the actual nurseries and point our clients in the right direction to go actually purchase those plant species that we're suggesting.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. This one's a big one for me. How do you structure your decision making and leadership in your various organizations and through your own permaculture projects?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that I love working with my best friend is that we have a great rapport. We have kind of defined our roles within our business, and it makes it really easy to know what my tasks are at hand. And I am continuously being encouraged to grow within my skills as well. And if I have a special interest, something that I'm wanting to focus on or learn more about, it's great having a cheerleader alongside that is encouraging me to lean into those things. And so, yeah, we've just been there for each other along this journey of figuring out what the next steps are within our business, and yeah, being encouraged within those things to have it be a tangible part of, you know, what is needed within our business. And we, yeah, have our own roles and get the job done.
Yeah, like I'm communications lead, Mary's the lead designer. I'm lead developer on the virtual tour stuff, but Mary's the lead videographer. So
do the editing as well.
Yeah, so we have our roles, and then we just everything's a collaboration, and we're lucky to have so much background where we've been best friends for so long. It's like really easy for us to work on anything together, which has been a huge part of our success and our ability to do work at such a high level. A lot of the opportunities that are coming to us right now are because I have a brilliant business partner that can do anything. Like it's like all of the things I can't do, she can do. And all of the things that like you can't do, I can do. We just bounce off of each other, and one of us always falls into the right spot at the right time, it seems.
Yeah, so far so good.
So, all right, I have one more lighthearted question, and then I had one finishing question to just finish us out, and that's just one question for me, basically. But for the fun one, what is your favorite permaculture resource right now?
Is it messed up to plug our own content? I mean,
Yes.
It feels pretty weird. But I will say we poured our hearts and souls into the virtual tours that we've built, and it is a one-of-a-kind experience to go view a farm from a 360 drone video and then go into the 3D model, spin that around and drop into the space, click on a video of the farmer talking about the space. It's like none of that was us, right? Like we're just documenting a site that some expert developed. So Brian Kirkfleet and Alexandra King at Inspiration Farm, two friends and mentors of ours, and two leaders in the Pacific Northwest in this space, in experimental research and community building and education. So that's what I want to plug, is their story. And you can find that in our virtual tour. So I'm not plugging us, I'm plugging them, because we have learned more from them than anybody in the world, and we want to share that with folks. So check it out. It'll be on edgeperma.com or the school community, the Permaculture Collective. It's there right now, but it'll be also free on our website in the next few weeks. And it takes 2 to 3 hours to complete the whole tour. So grab some snacks or go back to it when you have time. But yeah, check that out.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is I would encourage people to meet their local farmers and go see systems where they are doing incredible things and adopting sustainable methods. And in those off months where everything's fallow and it's raining and you don't want to go outside, hop onto our website, because that's a part of what we want, is to help farmers get, carry on their legacy, whether it's after they've retired. I want people to see the incredible work that they've put into a landscape for decades, or whether it's just in the off season. That's a huge accessibility piece. And we want to help farmers, get those timestamps and document season after season to show others the incredible work that they're doing. So go see your farms in the summer months and hop on our website in those crummy ones, because
well, and you just said something that brought up another thought, is that my favorite resources are people. It's like we would never have made it where we are without the extensive network of mentors and friends and colleagues and all of these people all around us doing this incredible work. And so that's what we're so passionate about doing, is telling their stories. And that's part of what we're doing on the podcast and part of what we're doing with the virtual tours. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to like backpedal on what I said earlier and really say my favorite resource in the permaculture space is the community of people, and the amazing folks that have taken us under their wings and just like helped us get where we are, and been willing to share so much. We've received so much just by asking, like, hey, can we come see your space? Can we chat with you? Can we have a conversation? So that's what I like. Anyone listening out there, please just tap into your community, and just spend time with people, because there's so many incredible elders all around us that are willing to share.
Get connected.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll link everything you said in the description so that it's easy for people watching to check it out. But yeah, that's something I loved learning more about this field, and like really wanting to get into it, is that it's not like competitive. I've met so many of my friends who are doing like, more business related things, or, my partner's a game design major, so it's very competitive. I don't have to worry about maybe like rising to the top, because it's just about the community, and you're like, hey, I need help with this thing. It's not like, oh, I have to go work so hard to do it by myself. There's just people around me who want to see me succeed and want to see, each other succeed. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And we need more of that in a lot of other, I guess, majors and careers and things like that.
That's
Now
such
I
a
have
wonderful perspective.
you. Now I just have my finishing question, which is, what advice would you give to a student like me who is just starting out on this journey?
Gosh, this might be the hardest question.
I know.
Best for last.
I think that what you're doing is, you're on the right path. I think it's not being afraid to ask those questions. I think that in a lot of industries, ego gets in the way. And so you're never going to be mastering permaculture. You're never going to master and know everything about nature. So just always be curious. Tap into that inner kid and don't be afraid to ask those questions. That's my short and sweet answer.
Yeah. Yeah, there are no masters in permaculture. There are no experts. Bill Mollison said in one of his lectures, like, permaculture is the one field of study that no one will ever claim to know anything about. And it's like, I mean, he said it himself. It's like, I feel really uncomfortable if somebody calls me an expert. It's not a thing. It's just not. We will always be learning. We will always be, there's always so much more to gain. And so many of these perspectives and thoughts and ideas we have can be blown up in a second when you see something new and you're exposed to new information, and that's always happening. My biggest piece of advice to you and any other student is do not be afraid of failing. Right now, where we're at, Mary and I recklessly have pursued our dream in this space for so long. And there's ways we could have done this better. There's ways we could have been safer, and we probably should have. We made some decisions that were not like the best financially. We invested everything we have into this dream for the future of education. And we failed over and over and over again. And being the communications director, that's my title. I'm the one that experiences that failure a lot. Reaching out to people, trying to make connections, trying to show them our passion and our skills, and try to build partnerships with different organizations doing the work that we're doing, and trying to find funding for the things we're passionate about. And it's been devastating to fail so much. And we're getting really close. We're getting really, really close to actually building our dream careers. And yeah, I would say
we've formed some great partnerships. It's been, yeah.
Right. But it's been a long grind to get here. And if I had been afraid of failing, we would have never made it here. So don't be discouraged by failures. Those are going to happen, and they're going to be incredible learning experiences for you. And on the end of it, like, you'll find your place where you're supposed to go. Just keep following your heart. And it'll lead you where you're supposed to go.
Wow. Yeah, we have about 5 minutes, 6 minutes left. Is there any last thing you want to say before we wrap this up and stop recording?
Just don't hesitate to get in contact with us, or if you have, if you want to connect someone else with us, a farmer or anybody that is interested in the work that we're doing, we're always happy to, chat more.
Yeah, please. You can check us out on social media. You can message us. We're probably most active on Instagram, Edge Perma on there, or just edgeperma.com. You can reach us there as well. Always happy to talk to any students, anyone interested in starting a career in this space. That's something that we do without question. Just the other day, a random person reached out and said, "Hey, I need some guidance. Trying to figure out my career in this space." Got on a phone call, and 20 minutes later, he said, "Thanks for all the resources, and I hope it was helpful." But that's just one way we like to practice and apply permaculture ethics and principles to our lives, is just giving back. So anyone that ever wants to chat, we're here.
Wow, that is just amazing and so important. Yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording now. Let me see.